Sonic Frontiers. It's one of those games that you either love or you hate. Some people act like this game kidnapped their family. But in all seriousness, Sega has made it clear that open zone is going to be the direction for Sonic's future. We already saw it in Shadow Generations, so it's nice to see that they're not going to be abandoning something that has a lot of promise. I also happen to like Sonic Frontiers a lot, so I just like them to build upon this in the next game. So there's 5 things that I'd like to see them do with Sonic Frontiers 2. Did that rhyme? So starting off, I think they should do a better job of designing the levels. And what do I mean by this? Let's take a look at right here, for example. Do you see what's next to Sonic? That is a spring. Typically, the objective of the game is to collect the memory tokens. If you simply go on the spring, you go through a lot of automated sections, basically to the point where you don't even have to do anything. And right there, you would get the memory token. In Sonic Frontiers, the game is definitely littered with a lot of these automated sections. It feels like they almost drag and dropped little bits and pieces of Sonic levels throughout. So we have the same exact objective over here. Instead of going down there on the spring and following the level design like I'm supposed to, how about I jump across and hit the spring right here, and then I got the memory token in a different way. So there's a lot of ways to attack this game, and I think that is the beauty of it. However, that is by my design, and I don't think the developers necessarily intend for that to be the case. Let's take a look at this section right here. Typically, you would just hop on these springs using just like homing attack chains, and then you'd go over here again, do another homing attack chain, and then you would hit off the spring, you'd go down here into another automated section, and then you would get the memory token. Or I could start from over here, I can boost, and I can just get it like that. So for me, finding these different and creative ways to attack these challenges is the gift that keeps on giving for this game. It's why I personally like it. I just like the freedom. On the other side of the argument, though, there are people that are saying, hey, this isn't necessarily engaging or cohesive level design. So what if you kind of like struck a natural balance between the two? What if you gave the players the freedom to kind of make their own creative routes while also creating more engaging level design built around Sonic's moveset? In Frontiers, he controls better than almost any other game in the series. Probably the best Sonic has ever controlled since Sonic Adventure. So I think if they go more like that Final Horizons and DLC route with the open zone and create these levels that have actual platforming that take use of Sonic's skill set, if you look at this speed run that I'm doing right here, I'm able to pull off some crazy stuff. If you put more of this into the game and a little bit less automation, maybe a little bit more cohesiveness to the design, it will appeal to the most people possible as opposed to alienating some people who prefer less of the automated gameplay style and more of that actual freedom. The game kind of has this roller coaster feel. It's like you get onto the platforming challenge and then it just flings you off and then just drops you off in the middle of the world. And then you get interrupted by something like the shark, and more on that later. But I think in the next game, they should do a better job of integrating the actual world into the level design as well. Instead of these floating grind rails and platforms that people really hate, try to integrate some of the natural terrain into the level. I think one of my favorite examples of the open world actually being integrated with proper level design is this section right here in Ares Island. It has proper level design in the sense that there's multiple routes that you can take. There's an upper path, there's a lower path. There's also ways you can take advantage of Sonic's moveset in order to manipulate the level design and do some skips without necessarily like flying over the entire level design, and it's not completely automated. So adding more stuff like this into the open zone while integrating some of the terrain into the level design would be something that fans would really like. So I would say more of that and less of like these dash panels just kind of flinging you accidentally in the open world into like a 2D section or something like that would be more preferable. Perhaps they can add a couple more tools to Sonic's moveset. For example, I'm playing this fan game here called Sonic Horizons, and it has like a cool wall running mechanic. What if that was properly and smoothly integrated into the world's level design? At the end of the day, though, Sonic is an absolute blast to move around in this open world, and some of the movements that you're able to pull off in this game is some of the most fun I've had with the series ever. So maybe I am a little biased because I do love this game, but I think striking that natural balance between what people want would be beneficial because more people would like the game. Hey, Sonic, you, gonna take care of this guy over here or what? The combat is also something that is much maligned with Sonic Frontiers, and maybe some tweaks and improvements could make it more engaging and fun. On the outset, the combat is extremely simple, which I think is kind of fun. Like, I'm playing a Sonic the Hedgehog game, so I don't necessarily want to be stuck doing combat sections. Once you realize there's not much challenge to it, and you can kind of just hold the parry button forever in order to block your enemy's attacks, or you can sit there and spam the same combos without any resistance from the enemies, you kind of realize, yeah, the combat's a little too simple, and maybe there's not enough challenge, and maybe this isn't great design. So I would think that the worst part of the combat in the game is actually probably the Guardian boss battles, because it feels like they kind of take too long. Like there's way too much padding going on with them. If I ever see an enemy like the tank or the caterpillar in the open zone, my first instinct is to just run away. I want nothing to do with it, and I will do anything to not engage with it whatsoever. So that is not a good sign for the combat. Enemies like Spider throw you into these super long skydiving sections. Fortress is another long grind rail section. The Shark, oh my goodness, don't get me started on the Shark. That is like one of the worst bosses in the game. Also, let's talk about about how they fling you into a little cutscene every time they pop up on the screen. That is one of the most annoying things that's ever been done to me in a game because it happens so many times. So yeah, if we're talking about combat as a whole, it's not the simplicity that bothers me so much. It's probably these Guardian fights. But being the fan of Frontiers that I am, I'm here to once again play the other side of the argument, and that is player input and player freedom. There's a lot of fun that you can create when you're fighting these Guardians. For example, the game wants me to do this. It wants me to go up this way. The game wants me to attack the top of Ashura, and then I get flung off. What if instead of playing the way Sonic Team designed it, I decide to have my own fun? Let's say I pop a spin dash real quick, hop on this grind rail, do a little rail launch right onto Ashura, and I found another fun and engaging way to do that. And instead of falling to the ground, I exploit the game's physics, and then I come up here and take him out. That is a lot more fun than sometimes engaging with the padding that the game allows for. Uh-oh, the squid has appeared. How does Sonic Team want me to fight squid? They want me to sit here and run on this automated section and kind of play the Starlight Carnival Sonic level. What if instead of doing the 40-second automated section that's really boring to chase down squid, I actually use some Sonic level design to try and chase him down? Maybe I'll actually do some platforming to add some style and flair to my boss battle. So I'll come up here, I'll do a nice little well-timed spin dash and try to fly all the way over to squid. Am I gonna make it? Yes, I am. There's certainly a ton of different ways we can go about doing this, but the point is, a lot of the fun in this game comes from creating it yourself. What if Sonic Team designed it where that creativity was built into the actual game design? It's like, can we get way more of what I did with Ashura and Squid and way less? Actually, let's make it 0 of what you're doing on this Guardian. This is like one of my least favorite in the game. I actually can kind of appreciate the simplicity of it because it's something that you don't necessarily have to spend too much time doing if you don't want to have to do it. It's probably at its best when you have full 360 control over the character when you're fighting bosses like Ninja, as opposed to those other bosses that have soft locks. But I think one big complaint of the game a lot of people have is combat, so if they can make it better in the next one, then by all means, let's do it. I think the next thing for sure that they should do is make sure to improve the linear stage experience. In Sonic Frontiers, the linear stages are called cyberspace. These are the linear stages that kind of break up the pace of the open world. Similar to the shrines in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, the cyberspace stages serve as that equivalent for Sonic Frontiers. At its core fundamental level, cyberspace is traditional Sonic gameplay. Hot take, I kind of like cyberspace in this game. I think Sonic has a really good moveset with his bounce abilities and his air dash, so it creates for a lot of fun and engaging platform, at least from my perspective. The biggest issue that plagues cyberspace, though, is the fact that 1, they are reusing levels from previous games, 2, the levels can be kind of short, and 3, the controls are not as smooth as the open zone. In cyberspace, Sonic's turning radius has been dramatically slowed down, so it feels like he's turning like a tank, which wouldn't be a problem if the level was properly designed around it, but the problem is, a lot of these levels are reused from Sonic Generations and Sonic Unleashed, 2 games that feature a drift mechanic. Since the levels in this game aren't completely original, that means a lot of them aren't built around Sonic's moveset. So the clunky controls can kind of feel like they get in the way, especially when you have to jump and change directions. It seems though that Sonic Team definitely has the message for how to handle these linear stages in this adventure boost hybrid type control scheme, which is what I consider Frontiers and Shadow Generations to be. What's crazy about this game is, yeah, the controls and physics are slightly tweaked and it's a little bit tighter, but for the most part, they are kind of the same. The difference between this game and Frontiers is that the levels are actually original and they're designed around Shadow's moveset. You're not going to really feel those tanky controls when you're trying to turn because the levels are very linear. They've created a lot of fun stages in the same exact engine that Sonic Frontiers is running on in Shadow Generation, so I feel like for the next Sonic game, I want cyberspace or some form of linear traditional stages to return. I feel like it's an absolute necessity for the open zone, and it makes the game feel like a true, unique Sonic game. So I want them to bring it back, but I want them to feel good to play. I also want the stages to be ambitious. I want them to be long. I don't want them to be like 30 seconds. So bring back cyberspace, or whatever you want to call it in the next game. Make every single level that you put in the game a real, true, full level like in Shadow, and let's run it back, but simply improve upon what you did in the first game. I'm an absolute sucker for platformer games that control really well. It's the reason why Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 are one of my favorite games of all time. It's the reason why I like Super Mario Odyssey. It's really one of the big reasons why I love Sonic Frontiers so much. Make Sonic feel good to control in these stages. Like, if you can make it even better than Shadow Generations, then go for it. But that's what I'm looking for in the sequel to Sonic Frontiers. Oh yeah, and by the way, don't make Sonic control differently in the open zone and cyberspace, especially if he controls better in the open zone. The next thing I would like to see in Sonic Frontiers 2, or whatever they call the next open zone game is a little bit more variety between the open zones. In Sonic Frontiers, it's kind of like this barren wasteland island. What if instead of getting these like generic terrains and landscapes, we got something that was a little bit more in line with Sonic? It doesn't necessarily have to be Green Hill, but what if the next open zone game, Angel Island, was featured as one of the open zones? Maybe the whole game takes place on Angel Island. What if we had like a Station Square open zone with like a city or something like that? What I'm trying to say here is that we need more variety with the landscapes. something to make each island or level theme feel unique from the one previously. I mean, there's literally 3 Kronos Islands in the game. Chaos Island is kind of just like this volcano area with nothing going on, and then Ares Island is just like the generic desert. Sonic the Hedgehog has this extremely iconic art style for the series, so if they were able to return to previous locations or even new locations with just a more distinct art style, that I think would be very good. Last but not least, I think one of the biggest things that Sonic Frontiers 2 needs is an incredible amount of polish. And that doesn't just start with the gameplay. It starts with really almost everything. Let's start with the cutscenes of the game. Some of them are okay, but there's a lot of them that are just the characters standing around talking with little to no movement. This does not really scream AAA or super high quality. Even the cutscenes where they're actually moving around don't really look that great either, but it seems like this is going to be corrected, as Shadow Generations has had incredible animation and cutscenes, and it honestly looks night and day compared to Sonic Frontiers. And this is just a side project, so imagine what Sonic Team can do with a little more budget, time, resources, and effort in a AAA game. And a lot of that could also be applied to the in-game animations as well. He's still using the same running motions that he used from Sonic Forces. They could probably touch up on the smoothness of the physics as well. Like, look what happens when you try to run on this rock. Like, it just looks so ugly. Look at that. Like, for example, there's a cliff right here, and if Sonic boosts off of it, he kind of just, like, sticks to the terrain. It's just kind of weird. It doesn't look good. There's unscalable terrain, and now, like, I don't even know what's going on with my character right now. Like, we all know that the game has some polish issues. While there's still a lot of fun to be had, if they can make it look even smoother, that would be good. That could even apply to the model as well. Like, maybe we can have a more stylized Sonic. It feels like we've been using kind of the same thing for the last 20 years. And that polish also applies to the story. Now, this is probably one of the most ambitious Sonic stories in a long time, probably since Sonic Unleashed. And I really appreciate what they did. I really like Ian Flynn's writing in the game. The characters, for the first time in a really long time, don't feel like parodies of themselves. Sonic actually feels a lot closer to the Sonic that I became a fan of when I was younger. But the problem with the story is, I think it was a little rushed and vague. Like, it feels like they're building up to something grand, and then you get to the final island, and it's like, oh, like, this is where they ran out of budget and time. And it really slaps you in the face at the end when you fight the moon with the shooting minigame. Obviously, Final Horizons fixed that, but had the game had proper polish and time, we wouldn't have this situation where we need a patch to fix the actual story of the game. In the Sonic Frontiers sequel, I still want them to go back to those more ambitious stories. I like what they did with Frontiers, but I think they could have done even better, because they definitely did a great job with the spectacle, and it's a lot more in line with the Sonic stories that I like. So keep going and bring something like this back. Just make it even better and give them the time that they need. Oh yeah, and it goes without saying, I guess this falls under the polish category. With the linear stages, they cannot be as janky as cyberspace. We talked about this earlier, but it definitely still falls under the polish category. While air controls in the game are relatively solid, especially in a linear fashion, when you're jumping, changing directions is very slow. Sonic has to do a full 360 motion when he jumps, so it really creates a lot of issues when you're platforming. So I think this is something that they can definitely improve. It doesn't really seem like it got much better in Shadow, so I don't know how it will improve in the next Sonic game. When I play a game like Sonic Adventure, the air controls feel a lot better when moving in that 360 motion. It also goes without saying, and I hope that because we're in the Nintendo Switch 2 era, we won't have this problem anymore, but they need to fix the pop-in. The pop-in for Sonic Frontiers is quite frankly embarrassing for a AAA game in the year that it was released, 2022, basically 2023. So this is what the sequel to Sonic Frontiers needs. Despite the fact that it's one of my favorite 3D Sonic games ever, the unfortunate reality is that it received a 7 out of 10. So I think if we implement some of these ideas and make some tweaks and improvements, the sequel can widely be seen amongst the general community as like an 8.5 or a 9 out of 10.